This news could impact millions in India, where common paracetamol-based drugs like Crocin, Dolo and Calpol could come under scrutiny after the US President Donald Trump and his Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. claimed that acetaminophen, the chemical which is used in the drug Tylenol, contributes to rising autism rates among children. Tylenol is an extremely common medicine. It's used to treat fevers and body aches. Trump has now ordered the US Food and Drug Administration to update pregnancy warnings within 90 days. Kenvue, Tylenol's manufacturer, has rejected the assertions, denying any causal link between the use of Tylenol by pregnant women and a rise in cases of autism. Scientists and public health experts have slammed the claims as well. Well, joining us now to try and understand a little bit more about acetaminophen, and it's called paracetamol over here. It's used commonly by millions of drugs. It is now, according to the American medical system, Donald Trump being linked to autism and also ADHD. Joining us now, Dr. Eric Fiegelding, one of the best-known epidemiologists. Thanks very much, Eric, for being with us. In simple terms, paracetamol, it's something used across the world. In India, we've got all sorts of drugs which are, over-the-counter drugs. Is the use of paracetamol linked potentially to higher cases of ADHD or autism?
Based on the best available evidence, there is no link. There's no causal link whatsoever currently, because, some of the older studies was more vague, but the biggest study of 2.5 million children in Sweden, which is 10 times, 100 times bigger than any other previous study, clearly shows that when they analyze it properly, there is no increased risk. And for those who are thinking, what was RFK Jr. and Trump today talk about at the press conference? Because there was a huge presidential press conference today about this. Those studies were outdated. Those studies that they highlighted were inconclusive or basically flawed. And in the world of science, we say junk in, junk out. If you do bad science, you get bad results. And this is the same kind of playbook in which some people say, well, there's some controversy around climate science. Therefore, we don't know there's climate change. But here we do know the best available gold standard evidence published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, which is like equivalent to Lancet. It clearly shows there's no increased risk of paracetamol, acetaminophen, Tylenol, and risk of autism.
Dr. Fiegelding, in a series of tweets that you've come out with, you've written, and I quote, a crude, unadjusted analysis found only a preliminary 5% risk, but once you adjust for family by matching using sibling controls, siblings who didn't get autism, the even tiny 5% risk appears to vaporize to 0%. In simple terms, what do you mean?
So basically, when you analyze all these children with autism and children without autism, you're usually comparing one mother and child, right? But there's many differences between mothers, between many families, genetics, personal history, infections. And I always tell people that you're taking Tylenol, this paracetamol, for a reason, because the mother has a fever. You don't take this drug unless you have a fever. So is it taking the drug, or is it having the fever, the infection, causing the children to get sick? And so the key thing is sometimes you have to separate that. And the best way to do it is to look at the mothers who have two children, older child, younger child, younger, older. One has autism, one does not. The mother took paracetamol when she was pregnant, one did not. And basically look across, again, 2.5 million children, right? And by looking with the sibling pair analysis, you actually have a good analysis of the same mother with two children, with or without autism. And then you can actually see, did it cause autism in them? And when you don't compare within the mother with two different children, you get a tiny 5% risk. Again, 5%, this is not going to explain autism at all, right? It's a tiny 5% increased risk. But when you do carefully look at mothers who had two different children, one with autism, one did not, clearly shows that the paracetamol had no increased risk. And that is the gold standard study.
So, Dr. Fiegelding, again, for the benefit of our viewers, in India, we've got drugs called Crocin, Calpol, these are Dolo, these are all paracetamol based, used over the counter, sold over the counter, very, very common. It's for pain and it's for fever. It's a basic form of relief. In simple terms, there is no enhanced risk, in your opinion, compared to whatever risk has existed in the past, right?
Right, correct. There's no increased risk. And I always remind people that a mother having a fever while pregnant is something that's very bad. Increased risk of miscarriages and increased risk of birth defects in the fetus. So a mother really does not want to have a fever. It is much more dangerous for her to actually, my fear is someone hears this misinformation, says, oh, I'm not going to take this medicine to lower my fever. But what happens? Miscarriage will increase and birth defects will increase. So lowering the fever, stopping fevers in a pregnant mother is incredibly important. And so there's no good evidence that says that, paracetamol increases autism. The best evidence in the world, 2.5 million people in Sweden and also in Norway as well, found no increased risk when you carefully look at the data in the right way. And that is the key. There's not every correlation is causation, but every causation is correlation if you do the right way. And there's no causation here, and it's very safe. It's more dangerous not to keep your fever down and just ignore and have a fever for a pregnant woman.
And so, again, another basic question. Is there a link between a higher dosage of paracetamol and potential ADHD or autism? It's a common argument. If you consume these drugs in large quantities, then there is a chance of, it having a negative reaction on your body. Is there anything in this American study that's established that?
Exactly. Like traditionally, if a drug if it's theoretically dangerous, the more you take, the worse it is. But they didn't find this like the more, the worse whatsoever. They just didn't find it at all. And if anything, it was like almost hopping around zero. It made no sense. So there's no dose response. And when you don't see a dose response, that's also a clue that probably there's nothing there. I also want to point out the studies that older studies, even they also pointed out that using paracetamol less than 29 days, 28 days or less, had no increased risk whatsoever. It's only with the longer duration of dose use that they found some risk, which again disappeared once you did the correct analysis. So there's no evidence whatsoever for the short term, and for the long term, the gold standard evidence says there's no risk as well. And I think people need to be reminded of that remember, if you have fever for more than a month, right, more than 29 days, clearly you have some other major illness that you're suffering during your pregnancy. This is not a one-time, oh, I'm sick for a day kind of thing. If you're taking paracetamol for that long, it's something else that the mother got, a major long-term infection that is likely explaining the autism. It's not taking the fever against the infection.
So a final question. Now, we've seen a lot of science coming out of America in the recent past from those, very close medical advisors to the president. Some of them are anti-vaxxers. Both of us have done at least 10, 12 interviews during the height of COVID where we've spoken, for example, on the importance of vaccines. Is there a sense that the science now emerging is hocus pocus? It's not real science. It's not based on anything substantive.
Yeah, it's the same playbook. Trump talking crazy about some bleach drinking bleach, about some hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, all this stuff against COVID that does not work. And now he's pushing this, unscientific claimed that no medical association, no obstetrics gynecologist endorses in the United States, and no other CDC outside of the United States is endorsing. But right now, Trump has appointed the king of anti-vax as the head of the health department, RFK Jr. And he also recently fired the US CDC director for basically, standing up to him and telling him he's wrong. And he fired her. So this is the world we live in. The US CDC, US Health Department is in the upside down dystopian universe where down is up and up is down, and the anti-vaxxers are now inside controlling the health department and spreading misinformation as well as about vaccines as well as Tylenol and paracetamol.
Well, a little while earlier on in the evening, I spoke to one of our finest doctors, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, former chief scientist of the World Health Organization, for her views on whether the use of paracetamol causes or is linked to autism or ADHD. With so many remarks now being made in the United States on paracetamol or Tylenol and whether it actually has an impact or related to autism or ADHD, we thought we'd get a straight answer. Joining us now, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan. Thanks, ma'am, very much for being with us. You've been a chief scientist of the World Health Organization. You know a thing or two about drugs and basic ones like this. I think the basic question that a lot of people in our country want to know is, whenever we are unwell, we have a fever or a headache, we have a Crocin or a Calpol or a Dolo. Is that harmful?
It's not harmful, Vishnu. Let me say that, first of all, for any medicine that we take, we always have to balance the benefits and the risks, right? So when we take a medicine, it's for a symptom or a disease that we're suffering from. And every medicine has always some risks, some chances of side effects, however small they may be. So paracetamol is one of the safest medicines. It's used to treat fever. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's also used as a painkiller. And it's been used widely for many, many, many years across all age groups. In pregnancy, in fact, it's one of the safest drugs to use for either pain or fever. So there is no need to panic. There is no, I would say, no new dramatic news or scientific evidence that should make us get alarmed or take pause at taking paracetamol. So when we need paracetamol, we can certainly take it.
So, ma'am, I think the question, therefore, is what the Americans have been saying, what President Trump and what his medical advisors have been saying, is that in the case of pregnant women, if they are to take Tylenol, then there is an increased likelihood of autism for the child, for the fetus, and perhaps ADHD in later life. Is there any scientific evidence of this that you trust?
So, if you look at studies that have been done, of course, autism is something that we still don't know the cause of. And so there is need for more research on autism and related disorders. And it's very important to actually fund that kind of work. But the studies that have been done are mainly observational studies. So you follow up a lot of pregnant women, and or you go backwards looking at children with autism spectrum disorder and see what happened during pregnancy. And what these studies have shown are basically that there is some association, a weak association between taking paracetamol during pregnancy, especially late pregnancy, and having some kind of neurodevelopmental disorder. Now, it's also correlated with the length of time and the dose of the drug. So the longer you've taken it for, the higher the total amount of the paracetamol, a little bit the association gets stronger, because overall it's a very weak association. There's a difference between association and causation, because there are so many factors, what we call confounding factors or variables. For example, the very condition for which the woman might have taken paracetamol. It may have been an infectious disease. It may have been an inflammatory disease that she was suffering from. Now, that could have been the reason why that particular baby had a particular outcome. It may not have been the drug at all. So when studies have been done on siblings, so the same mother, the same environment, the same genetic background, then these associations actually kind of become very little, or they disappear almost, indicating that there are other influences that are probably much more important than this drug. So I think it's a bit of an overreaction now, what is happening in the United States, creating unnecessary fear and panic among people. This is not to say that we should medicate ourselves or over-medicate or self-medicate. I think that just common sense tells us that we should take drugs only when we need to, for the right dose, for the right duration, on a doctor's advice, and particularly if someone's pregnant, you don't want to take unnecessary medication because no medication is 100% safe. But having said that, if you have a fever or pain or any other condition for which you need relief, you can take paracetamol. It's extremely safe. It's the safest painkiller you can take during pregnancy.
And therefore, ma'am, the larger question, because we've seen the Trump administration come up with a lot of statements of late, which are questionable. For example, the entire issue of vaccines. They have anti-vaxxers running the medical program. And now remarks like this. Is this hocus pocus science?
I think it's extremely dangerous and extremely damaging because we're talking about public health here. And we're talking about creating distrust amongst people in science, in medical advances. Vaccines have saved millions and millions of lives. We've eradicated diseases like smallpox because of vaccine. We're on the verge of eradicating polio. This would not have been possible without vaccines. And similarly, for many other benefits that have been proven through years and years of medical research, including, casting doubt on mRNA vaccines. mRNA technology is a technology that's going to provide us a lot of benefits in the future. There's a lot of research going on, not just on COVID vaccine, but on a whole range of monoclonal antibodies, therapeutics, and vaccines. So I'm, absolutely, it's horrifying to see that the kind of attacks on science, and particularly on health and medicine and medical research that are now that you see, will have a damaging effect on the health of people around the world, because when you sow that little seed of doubt, the next time your doctor or a public health practitioner tells you something, you begin to suspect it.
Yeah.
So while it's good to question and to understand the reasons and the rationale behind certain decisions, it's a completely different thing to be spreading misinformation.
Do you believe there needs to be, and this is my final question, a categorical statement from the ICMR telling people that, paracetamol, if taken in proper doses, is safe?
So regulatory agencies around the world, including the European and the Medical Health Research Agency of the UK, have already put out statements reassuring the public that paracetamol is safe during pregnancy. I'm sure that the Indian authorities would do so also very soon.
All right, ma'am. Thank you very much for speaking to us. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
It does appear, and we've spoken to Indian doctors here as well, many of them, that paracetamol is safe, the crocin tablet that you use for fever and for pain relief. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, for any contraindications, do speak to your doctor, but that's true of all cases. For the moment, we're out of time. From all of us here on Left, Right and Center, good night.